student scholars in association with Goa Headmasters Association.
Hello students, myself Ramita Sarvesh Mupkar from the Progress High School, Penchim. So today let us learn about metals and non-metals in the chapter metals and non-metals. So in 9th standard we had studied about elements. So altogether there are 115 elements, out of which only 22 are non-metals and rest are metals and metalloids. Now you will say that only 22 are non-metals, so they are not that useful, but no. Oxygen is a non-metal and it is very important for us. Without oxygen, the life won't exist on the surface of the earth. So oxygen is very important for the survival, which is a non-metal. Now here I have the picture for you. In the first picture you can see the examples of metals, that are lead, gold, silver and copper. Besides, you can see the articles which are made up of metals, like the scissor, spoon, plates, lock, key, everything is made out of metals. Okay. The second example, in the third picture you can see the non-metals. The first, the shiny substance, that is the diamond. It is the hardest substance which is present in the nature. It is one form of a carbon. So carbon exists in two forms. One is, that is powdered form, is a graphite, and the hardest form is the diamond. The red color powder which you can see, it is of phosphorus, and the yellow color is a sulfur. So all these are the examples of metals. Now let us move on to the properties of metals and the non-metals. Now what do you mean by properties? Properties, in the sense we are going to discuss about two types of properties. First one is the physical properties and second one chemical properties. Under physical properties we shall study about the shape, size, color, hardness, melting point, all such properties will be covered. Under the chemical properties we will see how metals, non-metals, they react, the chemical reactions which are taking place in the metals and the non-metals. So first let us begin with the physical properties of the metals and the non-metals. The first property says that metals, they have luster. What do you mean by luster now? Luster means shine. I have shown you in the picture the example of metals, that is lead, gold, silver and copper. You can see that all are shining. It proves that metals have luster. Second property, they are generally hard. So all metals are hard, that means they are very strong. Third property says that metals are malleable. Now what do we mean by malleable? It is the property of the metals by which the metals can be drawn into thin sheets. Here you can see the first one is the sheets of gold. Here second is the sheet made up of aluminium. So all this property says that the metals, they are malleable. Okay. The second, after this we have the property that metals are ductile. Ductile means what? It is the property by which the metals can be drawn into thin wires. So again let us move on to the picture. Here you can see the wire which is taken out of gold. So if we take 1 gram of gold, okay, we can pull or we can draw 2000 meter length of a wire. So such a ductile gold is. Secondly, we have the wire which is drawn out of copper. You must have seen in all the electrical circuits, all the electrical equipments for domestic purpose, industrial purpose, everywhere copper wirings are being used. Okay. So this proves that the metals are ductile and malleable. Out of all the metals which is being known to us, gold is the most ductile metal. The next property is metals are good conductors of heat and electricity. So when we want to cook something, we use copper utensils, aluminum utensils at home. When we keep it on the gas stove, not only the bottom but the whole utensil becomes hot. So we come to know that heat is getting conducted in the utensil. So by this we can say that metals are good conductors of heat. The next is metals are good conductors of electricity. So just now I have shown you the picture of copper wire and I have told you that they are used in the electrical circuits. Why they are used in electrical circuits? Because they are good conductors, they will allow electric current to pass through them. The wires, they are not used directly but they are coated, always they are coated with the help of a rubber like material, and that rubber like material is PVC, full form I have written polyvinyl chloride. Next property is all the metals, since they are very hard, it is very difficult to melt this metal. So they have very high melting and the boiling point. Next is the metals are sonorous. Sonorous means what? They are producing ringing sound. The bells, the school bells for the recess, after every period the school bell which rings, it is made up of metal, because when two metal objects, when they strike with each other, it produces ringing sound. So we can say that metals are sonorous. Now here I have the best conductors of heat. Out of all the examples and the metals, the best conductors of heat are silver and copper. Mercury and lead, they are also known as metals, but they are not good conductors, they are very poor conductors of heat. Now let us move on to the properties of non-metals. Non-metals, they are exactly opposite of metals, that is they are non-lustrous. They are not hard, they occur in solid form and gaseous form. There is one exception, that is bromine. Bromine is not occurring in solid, neither in gaseous state, it occurs as a liquid. Non-metals are non-ductile, they are non-malleable, plus non-metals are poor conductors of electricity, except graphite. Graphite is another form of carbon. We have seen in the first picture diamond and graphite. So graphite and diamond both are the forms of carbon. So we say that carbon has allotropes, that are graphite and diamond. So the graphite is a very good conductor of electricity. So this graphite, when you in the electric cell, if you open the metal cap, inside the metal cap you will see a black color powder. So that black color powder is nothing but it is graphite. So it is, we can say that it is very good conductor of electricity. Now for all these properties which we have studied, there are many exceptions. The first exception is, we said that metals, they are very hard, but no, one exception says that mercury, it is a metal but it occurs in liquid state. We all have used thermometers. So inside the thermometers mercury is present. So whenever the temperature rise or fall, the mercury level inside the thermometer, it rises and falls. The next one is gallium and cesium. Gallium and cesium are also the metals, but they have very low melting point. Even if I keep the metals on my hand, on my palm, they will easily melt. So they have very low melting point. I said that non-metals are non-lustrous, that means they don't have shine. But iodine is also one form of a non-metal, but it has a luster, that means it is shiny. Now next is alkali metals. Now what are alkali metals? The metals which are easily soluble in water. So they are lithium, sodium and potassium. So these metals, it is said that they are not hard, they are very soft, that we can cut with the help of a knife also. Now because of this exception, physical properties of metals and non-metals are not taken into consideration, because there are many exceptions for the properties. Now because of this, it is very essential that we also study the next property, which says the chemical properties of metals. So now in these chemical properties, we will deal with the reactions which the metals are undergoing. The first reaction says what happens when metals are burnt in air. So in air, in standard 6th, we had performed the activity which says that oxygen supports burning. We had taken candle and we have inverted a glass on the candle. So when the glass was inverted, the candle was off. The candle didn't blow. So now here we can see that the gas which is responsible for burning process is oxygen. So now let us see here the first reaction. What happens when metals are burnt in air? So in air the gas which supports burning is oxygen. So when metal combines with oxygen, we get metal oxide. One example is of copper. Cu is the symbol for copper. So when copper reacts with O2, oxygen, we get copper oxide. So it is when it is heated, we get copper oxide. It is the formation of metal oxide. Other example I can take of aluminium. If aluminium is also burnt in air, that is when it combines with oxygen, we will get formation of aluminium oxide. When iron will be exposed to oxygen, we will get formation of iron oxide. So all these metal oxides which are formed, suppose if they are tested with the help of litmus paper, it is shown that this metal oxides, they are basic in nature, that is the red litmus paper will turn blue. But the oxides of aluminium and zinc, they are showing both the character. They are showing the character of acids also plus bases. So such oxides which reacts with both the acids and bases to produce salt and water, okay, they are known as amphoteric oxide. Suppose if you get for exam the question as examples of amphoteric oxide, the answer will be aluminium oxide and zinc oxide because they react with both acids and bases. So here the reaction goes this way, aluminium oxide plus HCl, okay, HCl is hydrochloric acid. So we get formation of aluminium chloride, it is a salt, plus H2O is water, so water is being released. When aluminium oxide, when it reacts with sodium hydroxide is a base, we get the formation of sodium aluminate and water is being released in the process. So in both the process we see that when it reacts with HCl and NaOH, that is acid and base, we get salt and water. So such oxides are amphoteric oxides. Now all the metal oxides which are formed, they are not soluble, that means they are insoluble in water, except the metals like lithium, sodium, potassium. These are the alkali metals, they can easily dissolve in water. So when they will dissolve in water? When in the oxide form. When sodium is present in oxide form, that is when sodium oxide, if it dissolve in water, it will easily dissolve in water to produce alkalis. Okay, the alkali, here I have written the reaction, sodium oxide, when it reacts with water, we get NaOH, that is sodium hydroxide, it is a alkali. Why it is alkali? Because it is formed by dissolving in water. Then potassium oxide, K2O, K is potassium, H2O is water. So when potassium oxide is added to water, we get potassium hydroxide. This is also one alkali which is being produced. Now this reactivity of different metals, it will differ. All the metals will not react with water at the same with the same intensity, the reaction will differ. Now sodium and potassium, we can see that the reaction of sodium and potassium is highly reactive. So we cannot keep sodium and potassium in open containers or on open places because it will directly react with oxygen and it will catch fire. So always sodium and potassium, these are the two metals, they are always stored in kerosene containers because they are highly reactive. Now the metals like magnesium, aluminium, zinc and lead, these are always covered with a layer when it reacts with oxygen, they are covered with the oxide layer, and this oxide layer forms a protective layer, protective shield against this magnesium. So, when oxide layers forms on magnesium, aluminum, zinc and lead, it will prevent further oxidation. So, it is like a protective film which is being forming on these metals. Now, next is iron filing. So, iron filings means what? The powdered form of iron when it is sprinkled in the burner. So, it will immediately catch fire. Plain iron, which is a metal, it will not react with oxygen or it will not burnt in oxygen. But when it is converted to powdered form, if we sprinkle the powder in the burner, it will catch fire and we will get formation of iron oxide. The next is copper. Copper is a metal, it does not burn, but only if copper is very hot, it will react with oxygen to form copper oxide, or a black layer of copper oxide will be formed on the copper utensil or copper metal. The next metals, they are the silver and gold. They will never react with oxygen to form any oxide. So, they are not reacting with oxygen at all. Now, this process of forming a protective layer of oxide is being used in order to give aluminum articles a decorative finish or an attractive finish. So, the process of forming a thick oxide layer of aluminum is known as anodizing. Now, what is anodizing? In anodizing, we do a same process like how we do for electrolysis. So, here two electrodes are taken, one is anode and one is cathode. So, cathode we can take aluminum and anode is the aluminum article or the item which we want to give the attractive finish. So, we are taking an electrolyte, that is sulfuric acid. Both the electrodes are connected to a battery. So, when electric current passes through this circuit, the sulfuric acid which is present in the tank, it will release oxygen. So, oxygen will be liberated from the electrolyte. It will get dissociated and ions will be formed, oxygen ions. So, that oxygen ions, since they are negatively charged, they will be attracted towards the electrode which is positively charged, and positively charged electrode is anode. So, that anode which is there is positively charged, it will attract all the oxygen and all the oxygen will start depositing on the aluminum article. Okay. So, we will get a thicker and thicker protective layer of oxide on the aluminum article. So, this oxide layer can be easily dyed on the aluminum article to give it a attractive finish. So, this process is known as anodizing. Next, we will see what happens when metals react with water. This is the second reaction of the metals. So, when metals they react with water, we get first the formation of metal oxide plus hydrogen gas is liberated. So, this metal oxide, when it reacts further with water, we get the formation of metal hydroxide. Okay. Out of all the metals, sodium and potassium, we said that they are stored in kerosene. So, when they are added to water, they react violently with the cold water. Violently means what? They are giving the large amount of heat is evolved in the process when sodium and potassium are mixed with cold water. So, let us see the reaction of potassium with water. So, when potassium, that is K, is added to water, we get potassium hydroxide which is alkali, or we can say it is a base. And in this process hydrogen gas is liberated and plus heat is evolved. Since heat is evolved, we say this type of reaction as exothermic reaction. We have dealt about exothermic reaction in the first chapter. The next is sodium. Sodium, when it reacts with water, we get sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide is also one alkali. Hydrogen gas is released and heat is evolved. So, this reaction, both the reaction with sodium and potassium, highly exothermic reactions. Large amount of heat is evolved. The next is about calcium. So, when calcium reacts with water, the reaction is little less violent. So, little heat, less amount of heat is evolved. So, when calcium reacts with water, we get formation of calcium hydroxide, and in this process hydrogen gas is released. This hydrogen gas which is released, it sticks on the surface of calcium here. This hydrogen gas will stick on the surface of this calcium, which will make the calcium to float in the water. So, when we add water, directly the calcium will start floating on the water. So, you must have seen when you put chalk powder in water, chalk powder particles, they are floating on the surface of the water. So, why it happens? It is because of the chalk powder contains calcium, and here this calcium hydroxide which is being formed, the hydrogen gas is sticking on the surface of the calcium, which makes the calcium to float. Same reaction takes place with magnesium. When magnesium also reacts with the cold water, it is seen that magnesium hydroxide and hydrogen gas is given out. Same hydrogen gas sticks on the surface of magnesium also. The symbol of magnesium, we can say it is Mg. So, it sticks on the surface of magnesium, and also the magnesium starts floating in water. So, this is how the reaction takes place of the metals with water. Now, there are some metals like aluminium, iron and zinc. They are not reacting neither with the cold water nor with the hot water, but they are reacting with the steam. Okay? So, we are having the reaction in this manner. A glass wool is taken and it is soaked with water. Okay? It is here heat is supplied in the form of burner is supplying heat to the glass wool which is soaked in water. When heat is supplied, the water which is present in the glass wool, it will get evaporated. So, when water gets evaporated, it will convert it into steam. So, this steam will fall on the metal sample. So, when it reacts, so it will react with the metal sample, we will get formation of oxide. Okay. When it reacts with the metal sample, we will get the formation of oxide and hydrogen gas will be released. So, you will see here the pipe is connected, the pipe will take the hydrogen gas into this test tube. Here their bubbles are evolved. You can see the formation and evolution of bubbles, which says that hydrogen gas is released and which will settle at the top of the test tube. Okay. So, suppose the metal is aluminium. So, when aluminium will react with the steam, that is water which is present in the form of a steam, we will get aluminium oxide and hydrogen gas is released. Iron, when it reacts with water, Fe is iron, Al is aluminium, we will get iron oxide plus hydrogen gas is released. The other metals like lead, copper, silver and gold, they will not react with hot water, cold water, nothing, nor with the steam. Okay, they will not react with water at all. Next is what happens when metals reacts with acids. So, for this I want you all to see the picture. So, in this picture we have taken 4 test tubes. So, in all the 4 test tubes we have put metal samples. So, small piece of metal is being cut and it is put in all the test tubes. In first test tube we have put a sample of magnesium. The sample should be very clean. If it is not clean, we can rub it with the help of a sandpaper. So, here we have put magnesium, zinc, lead and copper. And after putting the samples, then we have to put HCl, that is hydrochloric acid, in the test tube. As soon as hydrochloric acid is added to the test tube, it is seen that magnesium will react vigorously with the HCl. So, how we come to know? We come to know because of the formation of the bubbles. So, bubbles tells us that reaction has taken place. Little less reaction is taking place in the case of zinc. Zinc is not reacting that violently as compared to magnesium. Little less violent reaction takes place in the case of zinc. Lead, we can say there is no reaction, little Okay, we can say that there is no reaction occurring with the lead. Copper, there is complete no evolution of bubbles. In the case of lead, at least few bubbles are released, but in the case of copper, no bubbles are evolved, which says that copper is not reacting with the dilute HCl, which is hydrochloric acid. So, out of all this, if we want to say about the reactivity, that means which is more reactive with hydrochloric acid. So, magnesium is very highly reactive as compared to other metals, that are zinc, lead and copper. Copper has no reaction with the hydrochloric acid. So, here when we speak about the reactivity decreases in this order. So, magnesium is more reactive, aluminum is little less, then lesser is zinc, iron is lesser than zinc, copper will not react with hydrochloric acid. Now, in place of hydrochloric acid, if we take nitric acid, that is formula is HNO3. In here you can see that there are 3 oxygens in this formula. So, nitric acid is a strong oxidizing agent. So, in this process the hydrogen gas, we have seen when the metal reacts with acid, hydrogen gas is evolved. But what the nitric acid will do? Nitric acid will oxidize that hydrogen. Oxidize means it will add oxygen to the hydrogen, and we will get, when hydrogen and oxygen combines, we get the formation of water. So, water is formed in the process, and itself nitric acid will be converted to one of the oxides. Since it is a strong oxidizing agent, hydrogen gas is not evolved, but it is oxidized to water. Except, here also there are exceptions, except manganese and magnesium. Mg is magnesium, Mn is manganese. So, Mg and Mn, that is magnesium and manganese, when it reacts with nitric acid, hydrogen gas will be evolved. Nitric acid won't oxidize in this reaction hydrogen to water. So, next we will see how do metals react with solutions of other metal salts. Okay. How do metals react with solution of other metal salt? It is nothing but the displacement reaction. Displacement reaction is what? The highly reactive metals, they are displacing the less reactive metals from their salt solution. So, here if suppose we have metal A and the solution is of metal B. Now, metal A is highly reactive. What the metal A will do? Metal A will displace metal B from the solution, and we will get the solution of A, and metal B will be given out. Okay. Now, here we have taken, we can see in the picture here, the first, there are 2 test tubes. In the first test tube we have copper sulphate solution. In the second test tube we have iron sulphate solution. In the copper sulphate solution we have put iron nail, and in iron sulphate solution we have put copper wire. So, when iron is dipped in this copper solution, copper sulphate solution, iron is more reactive than copper. So, what iron will do? It will displace the copper from its solution. So, we can see here the color of the solution is getting faded. Okay. So, why it is fading? It is because the iron is taking the place of the copper, and we are getting formation of iron sulphate here in this test tube. But here in the second test tube we can see that there is no reaction. It is because copper is less reactive. It will not displace iron from the solution. So, here no reaction is taking place. We can write the reaction as copper sulphate, CuSO4, copper sulphate, Fe is iron. So, Fe will go and sit on the place of copper. We will get iron sulphate plus copper will be given out as a metal. Okay. So, this is the displacement reaction. So, to conclude, we have seen different reactions and different reactivity of the metal. So, we are placing all the metals according to their reactivity. So, the highly reactive metals will be placed at one top corner, then the medium reactivity, and last will be the low reactive metals. Low reactive we have seen silver, gold, platinum, copper, they are not reacting with most of the examples which we have taken. So, here we have the picture of reactivity series of metal. We can see at the top potassium is highly reactive, sodium, calcium, magnesium, all these are the most reactive metals. Then aluminum, zinc, iron, tin, lead, they are having medium reactivity. Copper, silver, gold and platinum, they are the least reactive. Out of this, gold, silver, gold and platinum, they are the least reactive metals. So, this table is formed on the basis of the chemical properties and the chemical reactions which we have discussed. So, we say that sodium, potassium, calcium which are placed at the top corner, they are very reactive elements or the metals. Now, next let us see how do metals and non-metals react. For this we have to see the electronic configuration. Electronic configuration means what? Filling of atomic number in different shells. So, here we are dealing with the 3 shells K, L and M shell. We have taken different types of the elements. So, the first is helium. The shell is completely filled. In K shell there are maximum 2 chairs. 2 chairs for whom? For the electrons. So, here the 2 chairs are completely occupied. In L and M shells, the maximum number of electrons or the maximum chairs which are present, there are only 8. So, only 8 electrons can fit on that place. So, here we are having 2 electrons in the K shell. So, it has having completely filled outermost shell. In the case of neon, there are atomic number is 10, 2, 8. 2 will fit in the first chair, 8 will fit in the L shell. So, we are having completely filled orbital. In the case of argon also we are having completely filled valence shell. Valence shell is the outermost shell of any metal. Now, next is sodium. Atomic number is 11, 2, 8, 1. 1 means what? 1 is the number of electron which is present in the last M shell or the valence shell. In the case of magnesium, we have 2, 8, 2. 2 electrons are placed in the last shell. Aluminium 3 and calcium again 2 electrons. In the case of non-metals, 2, 5. So, there are 5 electrons in the outermost shell. Oxygen 6 and chlorine 7 electrons. So, now here the elements which are having completely filled outermost or the valence shell, they are known as the noble gases. Whereas, the metals which are having just 1, 2 or 3 electrons in the outermost shell, they are the metals. And the elements which are having 5, 6, 7, that means they just need few electrons. So, if we take the example of nitrogen, so there are 5. So, it just need more 3 electrons in order to complete its outermost shell. So, here in the case of oxygen, it will take 2 electrons, chlorine will require 1 electron. So, here we can see that it is nothing but the race of completing the outermost shell. So, that will decide about the reactivity of the metals. So, if the metals, if they lose all the electrons which are present in the outermost shell, they will easily become stable. All the metals, they have the tendency of losing electrons. Non-metals will have the tendency of accepting. Metals are giving, non-metals are taking the electrons which are being lost by the metals. Okay. So, we are moving to the next slide. So we saw that in the table, the completely filled shell, they are present only in the noble gases. So completely filled outermost shell or the valence shell will say that the elements, they are highly stable. So they don't need to be losing or accepting electrons. It is not required in the case of noble gases. Whereas the reactivity of other elements, it depends. In order to complete their outermost shell, here we see that it depends on the tendency to attain completely filled valence shell. So all the metals, they will always see whether the outermost shell is complete or no. Okay. Now let us take an example of sodium. Sodium, it has one electron. We saw that sodium has one electron in the outermost shell. If it loses that electron, it will become stable. So when it loses the electron in the outermost shell, it is seen that sodium, which is a metal, it will get converted into an ion, and that ion is a cation. So here when it loses the electron, it is seen that we have getting the formation of cation, that is Na plus. The sodium will lose only the electrons. The structure of atom, what it says, structure has a nucleus and the shells. So inside the nucleus we have protons present. So the number of protons won't change, only the electrons will be lost. So here the charge on the sodium metal will depend on this formula, that is number of protons minus number of electrons. So there are 11 protons in the nucleus. In the shells, one electron has been lost by sodium in order to become stable. So the charge on sodium will be 1. So sodium will get plus 1 charge. Now let us see about chlorine. Chlorine, it has 7 electrons in the outermost shell. So it just needs 1 electron. So what chlorine will do? Chlorine will accept the electron, or it will take the electron which metal sodium is giving. So in this process what will happen? Chlorine will become an anion. So it will get negative charge. Now how it will get negative charge? The number of protons in chlorine in the nucleus is the same. It won't change. It will remain 17. But extra electron is added in the shell. So the formula will be number of protons minus number of electrons. So we will get the final outcome as minus 1. So that is number of protons are 17 minus 18, we will get the answer as negative 1. So that negative 1 will be added as a charge on chlorine. So chlorine, so this is the minus 1 charge, which is a negative charge which will be added on chlorine, and now chlorine will be called as chloride anion. If the metals or the elements, when they have positive charge, they are called as cations. If they are having negative charge, they are known as anions. So here we can see the formation of sodium chloride. So sodium, it loses this electron and we get the formation of sodium cation. Chlorine will take this electron and we will get the formation of chloride anion. So here we can see sodium, which is having 1 electron, it will donate to chlorine and we will get this formation of sodium chloride. Magnesium, on the other hand, it is having 2 electrons extra in the last valence shell. So it will give that 2 electron, or it will donate the 2 electrons. That 2 electrons will be taken by 2 chloride or chlorine elements. 2 chlorine atoms will take that 2 electrons here and we will get the formation of magnesium chloride. Similarly, we will see the formation of magnesium oxide. Oxygen is lacking with 2 electrons, so it will take the 2 electrons which the magnesium is giving and we will get the formation of oxide ion. So magnesium is donating the 2 electrons we can see to oxygen we are getting the formation of MgO, that is magnesium oxide is being formed. So now the sodium and chloride ions which are formed, that is sodium chloride, the molecule which we have got, the compound which is being formed, sodium chloride, it is formed how? It is formed when the oppositely charged ions, they are attracted to each other. So these ions which are there, they are held by strong forces of attraction. So that force is known as electrostatic force. The oppositely charged ions, they are held by electrostatic force. So which are the oppositely charged ions? Sodium plus and chlorine minus. So the plus and minus are the opposite charges. So here the compounds which are formed in this manner by give and take relation, by donating, accepting the electrons which are being lost or gained. So the compound which are formed in this manner by transferring of electrons from metals to non-metal, not from non-metal to metal. The charges are transferred from metal to non-metal. So such compounds are known as ionic compounds or electrovalent compounds. Now let us see the properties of the ionic compounds. The first property is the physical nature. The physical nature of ionic compounds. Ionic compounds are solids, okay? They are hard but brittle. If any force is applied, they will easily break into pieces. Second property is about melting and boiling point. We have seen just now the ionic compounds, they are formed by formation of ions, oppositely charged ions, they are held by strong electrostatic forces of attraction. So it becomes very difficult to break these bonds by providing heat. So they are having very high melting and boiling point. Next is about solubility. So the ionic compounds which are there, they are soluble only in water. If we take any other solvent like petrol, oil, kerosene, they will not dissolve in such solvents. Now let us see about the conduction of electricity. These ionic compounds which are there, they will conduct electricity if they are present in the molten state. If we just take the ionic compound in solid form, electricity won't flow. For flow of electric current, we need ions, and ions will be present only when the ionic compounds are in ionic or in molten form. So we are having here in solid state it will not conduct electricity, but in molten state it will conduct electricity. Because in molten state we are melting the ionic compound by providing heat. So the heat which is supplied, it is overcoming, or the heat supplied, it is overcome. The forces of attraction, they are overcome because of the heat which is being supplied to these compounds. So yes, the next slide is about the question answer. So what we have dealt in this part is the first question, name the most ductile element. The answer is gold. Next, name the two metals that are best conductors of heat. So silver and copper. Silver and copper both are the best conductors of heat, but we are not using silver in our electrical circuits. Why? The reason is silver is very costly as compared to copper. The cost will be very high. So we cannot afford to use silver wirings everywhere. So we are switching to copper wires. The two metals that are not good conductors of heat, they are the lead and mercury. Type of oxide produced by non-metals, acidic oxide, and the type of oxide produced by metal is the basic oxide. Next is name the oxide when copper is heated in air. So when copper is heated in air, we get copper oxide. So the black color coating which we have seen on the copper utensil, it is of copper oxide. So the two oxide which shows the acidic as well as basic behavior. So that is the amphoteric oxides. They are the aluminium oxide and the zinc oxide. the compound when aluminum oxide reacts with sodium hydroxide. It is sodium aluminate. So, here what are amphoteric oxide? Same thing, the metal oxide which reacts with acid and bases. What are alkalis? The alkalis are the oxides or the metal oxide which are soluble in water. So, why are metals like sodium, potassium kept immersed in kerosene? Because they are highly reactive, they can easily catch fire. So, what happens when iron filings or heating when sprinkled in the flame of the burner? So, they will react vigorously or they will burn vigorously. So, two metals that do not react with air even at high temperature. So, your answer is gold and silver. They will not react with air. Now, how do metal reacts with water? So, when metal reacts with water, we get metal oxide and hydrogen gas is released. And if it is soluble metal oxide, it will be converted into metal hydroxide. Now, next question, what happens when calcium and magnesium reacts with water? When calcium, magnesium reacts with water, they will start floating. It is because of the hydrogen gas which is released, it will stick on the surface of this metal. Next is the metals that do not react with water. They are copper, silver and gold, lead. The metals at the top of the reactivity series we have seen potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium and aluminum. The metals that react with steam, they are aluminum, iron and zinc. So, this is the thing we have discussed in today's chapter, today's part. Okay. So, we have seen the physical properties, the chemical properties of the metals and non-metals and the properties of the ionic compounds. Yes, thank you students. We will discuss the next part in the next session.